The member for Monaro.
Monaro, thanks, Speaker. Speaker, I rise to support the Housing Amendment Bill 2025. I do so just as I listened to the Shadow Minister speaking on this earlier today, and I characterise the opposition's contributions to some of these things in two ways. First of all, there's the we were fantastic, we did everything categorisation, and then there's the world began in March 2023. And this was the world began in March 2023 today, where he failed to acknowledge at all the problems that this government inherited with housing across New South Wales, but then went on to quite hypocritically criticise the minister for being too slow in introducing this legislation. Now, when you're actually making major change to the way that you deliver housing and public housing, and you've created things like Homes New South Wales, there's obviously going to be consequential amendments along the way that you need to do to put in place the arrangements that you need to deliver the resources. And I think that we should be welcoming the fact that we are seeing this bill here today. I know the opposition is supporting it, but absolutely welcoming it. But I just want to highlight the fact that in Monaro electorate, an issue which, when I was last the member for Monaro back in 2011, was a fairly isolated issue of homelessness, is now a massive issue of homelessness. It's one which isn't just in Queanbeyan, where it tended to be focused before, but goes right into the Snowy Mountains, where where sleeping in a car when you get temperatures of -8 or -10 at night is an incredibly risky thing for people to be doing, but that is what's happening. And that is happening because over the period of the 12 years of the previous government, we simply did not see new public and social housing built. In Queanbeyan itself, when I was the member up to 2011, I was delighted to be able to go to many blocks around Queanbeyan and look at the redevelopment that was going on of old public housing stock to create multiple units and dwellings, public housing dwellings on those sites. That progress in our city completely stopped when the government changed in 2011. Instead, what we saw was blocks of old public housing stock, which, when it became too decrepit, basically had boards put over the window and nobody inside it. So when I came back in to this position in 2023, there was at least 30 houses in the suburbs surrounding where I live which had the boarded up windows and people unable to live in them. More importantly, there hadn't been any new public housing stock developed by the previous government for the decade before that. And the result of that is that groups that are in our community desperately trying to help people who are at risk on housing or actually homelessness, groups like St Benedict's, who is an amazing group who provide meals and also housing support for people, we're getting to the stage of desperation. They were talking about needing to set up tents on the oval near their office to actually accommodate people. And unfortunately, it is a slow process to actually get on top of that. But this is a government which is committed to doing that, and I'm very committed as the local member to working with Minister Jackson to make sure that we are seeing some of that investment. We are looking at areas where the government can actually undertake development, which includes social and key worker accommodation. We're looking at that in Queanbeyan. We have a site in Cooma which is about to go ahead. We've seen key worker accommodation at Cooma Hospital. We're seeing recently an example of the way that Labor governments work on these things and have this housing priority, where our federal member Christine McBain, just in the last week or so, was in Queanbeyan announcing $4.8 million of federal funding for transitional housing, for 12 homes, for transitional housing for women over 55. Walking distance to the town centre, the first investment that we've seen of that kind in Queanbeyan in years. And that is the sort of proactive thing that we want to see happening. And I really, I have to say, get annoyed when I hear a shadow minister get up and say, you're not doing things fast enough. Well, we are trying to overcome an incredible backlog of problem left by the previous government over 12 years, and the Monaro electorate is certainly another electorate where that problem exploded over the period when I was living in Queanbeyan, able to observe what was going on, but wasn't able to be in this place to see what was happening. And I guess one of the things that highlights it for me is the fact that When I was re-elected, we had a flood of people coming through the doors of my office, and I have some wonderful staff in my office who are really committed to dealing and helping people with housing. None more so than Indigo, who is one of my staff members, who has been, over many years, was a volunteer on the Sleep Bus, a terrific initiative we have in Queanbeyan for people who are homeless and have nowhere to go. The Sleep Bus is something which has only been operating a few days a week, but recently has been purchased by the Terry Campese Foundation and will now be available more days of the week. Terry Campese, for those who have good memories, was going to be the candidate for Monaro until the Nationals started spreading rumours and nasty stories about him, and he pulled out. And that's the sort of person who probably would have been good in this place, although I'm very much enjoying my opportunity to do this second time around. But these are the sort of people like that, and the dedicated staff in my office, the 3 staff members in my office who are working with people every day. And one of the things that struck me was the people who came into my office and said, "We're so pleased that we have a Labor member back again because we simply didn't get a hearing when we came into this office previously." I've had fed to me by the people who work in housing, "Isn't it nice to have a local member who actually cares about people getting roofs over their heads?" That doesn't mean we've got anywhere near solving this problem, and it remains an incredibly high priority for me to make sure that we are not seeing people who need to live in tents. I've spoken in this place before about my brother-in-law who was in those sort of circumstances. And really importantly, that we're not seeing people who are at risk of homelessness living in the Snowy Mountains in Cooma, where frankly it is way too cold for people to be doing that. So I strongly support this bill and the measures that we're undertaking to start to try and get on top of this incredible problem.